Yenna Lee, the founder of Facebook, taking an apology tour to the European continent. He's in Brussels ahead of a trip to Paris on Wednesday. Mark Zuckerberg, who won't be going before the House of Commons in London, the UK, where the Cambridge Analytica scandal broke, and the data breach that led to the sharing of the private settings of 87 million users. For more, let's cross now to Dave Keating at the European Parliament, where Zuckerberg has been speaking to lawmakers and apologizing once again, Dave.
Yeah, we're about halfway through the testimony, I'd say. Actually, the leader of UKIP, the UK Independence Party, Nigel Farage, is speaking right now. The group that Zuckerberg is speaking to is the Conference of Presidents. Those are the leaders of all of the political groups in the parliament. There's been a lot of criticism of that because in the US Congress, he testified before the relevant committee. Now, of course, Farage is able to speak because he's the president of the Eurosceptic group here, and he just told Zuckerberg that he is his best friend in the room, because everyone else is criticizing Facebook's involvement with fake news, with manipulating elections. But Farage says that he doesn't want Facebook to do anything, that Facebook should remain a neutral platform, should not get in the business of deciding what's fake news and what's real news, and that if groups want to influence elections using the social media giant, so be it. The other questions have really focused on A, the influence in elections, B, the upcoming GDPR regulations. These are the EU's data privacy regulations that actually take effect on Friday, and there's skepticism about whether Facebook is fully compliant. And of course, the other big issue that lawmakers are grilling him about is whether Facebook is a monopoly that should be broken up. So far, the EU's competition watchdog has not gone after Facebook in the same way it's gone after others like Google and Microsoft. And so Zuckerberg's big mission today will be to convince these lawmakers that that isn't necessary. Now, this isn't a public hearing per se, because it's in a very small room here at the Parliament to a small group of people, but it is being web streamed in a Facebook Live. And that decision was made quite at the last minute. This was originally supposed to be entirely closed doors, but there was so much public pressure over the weekend that they eventually relented and decided to live stream it.
Yeah, you mentioned how we're speaking the same week where the EU is to tighten data protection policy. Mark Zuckerberg speaking earlier before those lawmakers. Let's listen.
That we haven't done enough to prevent these tools from being used for harm as well. And that goes for fake news, foreign interference in elections, and developers misusing people's information. We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility, and that was a mistake, and I'm sorry for it.
Yeah, more broadly, ahead of those new rules coming into effect, and a lot of eyes, Dave, are looking to Europe to be the ones to rein in Facebook's power. How is he doing when you compare with that testimony on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, it's interesting. That law was actually voted in several years ago. It just takes this long for it to take effect, and it's just a coincidence that it happens to be taking effect this Friday. And there was some skepticism here in Europe that a lot of the changes that Zuckerberg announced before the US Congress, the way he said Facebook was really going to be cracking down on this issue, were changes that were required by this incoming GDPR law anyway. And so they would have had to do it anyway. Europe is their largest market, and so it would be unusual and quite logistically difficult for them to apply these data rule changes only to Europe and not the rest of the world. So I think what the lawmakers here want to hear today is not only that he's going to be fully compliant, because that's going to be legally required, but that Facebook is going to get ahead of these issues, that lawmakers aren't going to have to keep chasing Facebook and dragging him before this group. I would say the main difference between his testimony to the US Congress and his testimony here today so far, and again, we're only halfway into it, but lawmakers have, in my assessment, there's been a little less showboating than there was in the US Congress testimony, but we'll see. We still have quite a ways to go in this appearance.
All right, live coverage there of Mark Zuckerberg in Brussels with our own Dave Keating. We'll be checking in with you later for more. The biggest show of unity among French civil service unions yielding mixed results. An estimated 16,000 demonstrators in the streets of Paris against the government's bid to slash the public sector workforce and tighten benefits.